Hi, I'm Tony Singh. I'm a chef, born and raised in Leith, 52. I love what I do.
Well, firstly, welcome to the studio, Tony. It's lovely to have you join us here for the Sikh Stories podcast and to get the opportunity to bring you back to your old stomping ground in Leith. It's fair to say that you're a well-kent face.
I'm a well-kent face. I can't shoplift anymore, so I'm a bit disappointed about that. That's what fame's brought me.
Not just locally, but also nationally, within culinary circles. You've also very recently been on our screens with Cooking with the Stars and Started the Kitchen. However, that's not what we're here to talk about today. In fact, I don't think I've heard you speak about this topic anywhere. So, in essence, this is a world exclusive for the Sikh Stories podcast.
It is a world exclusive, keeping it real, keeping it back to the hood.
So today you're going to be sharing with us your love for hip-hop and the impact and influence that hip-hop has had in your life. Now, before we dive right into that, what I'd love to be able to hear from you is, in essence, if you like, of your earlier childhood memories of music, what you first heard, who was listening to what in your family, in your household, and your influences from a younger age.
In the household, music was always part of our Punjabi cultural Sikh heritage. Weddings, festivals, anything like that. There was Bhangra, there was folk songs. But I knew music was something special because when my dad got a day off, he'd have his old set-up stereo system in the front room. Weren't allowed in the front room. But we'd sneak in and he'd be there, he'd have his headphones on, and he'd be listening to his what you call it, Dava, as they would call him then. So named after your Dava, big black record, and they'd go and get them. So they'd be playing his tracks, his vinyl on his big system. But it was headphones on because he just wanted his own space. So I always knew that it was somewhere you could escape to. So I loved music from then. We'd listen to it with Dad and everything like that. But growing up, the influences we had, so I would probably say it was from end of school, secondary. I was listening, when I was 15, 16, I started listening to Run DMC and everything like that. But the interesting thing as well, I was working as a YTS and I was working in a hotel where dinner dances were still a big thing. So it was a carvery, so I love swing. So swing bands, there was bands doing Motown covers and everything like that. So my taste in music is across all genres. When we were at school, you'd have whatever was on pop, whatever was there on mainstream, which was cool. Some of the stuff was really good, but then my mates were all greasers, so heavy metal was a big thing. And then that's what I think I got into hip hop as well, because it was a genre for me that expressed something that wasn't there. It was political, it was mind opening, it made me think, made me read on different cultures as well, the struggles that the black culture had in America, which then led me to have a look at persecution that was given to the Indians while the Raj was there. So it was weird in the sense of there was nothing to correlate it to our experience, but there was that angst that the music showed. Yeah, I could relate to that.
It's really interesting and quite a broad range in description there of, firstly, your first experience of music and hearing that in the house, and then moving on, quite interestingly, to the impact hip-hop had on you. And you touched on it there when you said that it's a genre of music that challenges oppression, inequality, and is quite empowering as well for people of colour. Now, you mentioned Run DMC there, and we were talking about early influences. So when you first heard hip-hop, how did that make you feel? What did that do to you internally? You touched on it there, but I'd be grateful if you could expand on it a bit more.
Well, it was about 1985-86, listening to Run DMC, Grandmaster Flash, Public Enemy, you know what I mean, Dougie Fresh, all these people, Two Live Crew. But the samples that they took were things from the 70s, from disco, from Motown. So the tunes were there, and then overlaying it with political messages or just fun tracks that were just so completely different. And then the fashion that went with it was awesome, you know what I mean?
Talk to me a bit more about the fashion.
So I'm still dyed in the blood Adidas, that's what I'll always wear. But it was one of the things back then, because there wasn't that much of a scene in Scotland, but you'd bump into folk or you're at clubs and you'd be in the same kind of gear and you'd talk, or somebody would say that's nice, or you'd stop at the same shops. You'd get the latest trainers that come over and everything like that. It was interesting to be a part of the scene. I can remember going down to London to pick up some trainers. It was British Knights. And then I went down to get a fantastic t-shirt from Soul to Soul. You wouldn't class that as rap, but it was in that hip-hop genre. It was brilliant. And to be part of that. And then when the first concert I ever went to was Public Enemy when they came to Glasgow, and this was me, wow, this is an internationally acclaimed band coming here. And then we met people that were coming up from Newcastle, London. It was amazing to see that music crosses all barriers and all people, brought it together. It was fantastic. Like food, I mean, that's why I love cooking. because you get somebody around the table and everybody has an experience of food, good, bad. It's a commonality we can talk about, and I think that's the same with music.
You mentioned their Public Enemy, going to see them in Glasgow at the Barrowlands, am I right in saying?
Barrowlands, aye, first time they came.
So tell me about that. Was that one of the first gigs that you went to see a band playing that type of music, or had you been out and seen a band before then?
I'd been a couple of gigs. I think the first gig we went to, because we were up in Aberdeen, it was Deacon Blue, completely on the opposite spectrum. It was interesting. It was fun. I enjoyed the day because we were with friends. That's why I went. So with an extra ticket, I wouldn't have been something I would go and see. So yeah, and then we'd seen a couple of gigs down in Edinburgh, but they were just in pubs. You know what I mean? Like the Black Bull, underneath the Black Bull and all that. But it was cool. You know what I mean? Live music was all over the city then. Like the Cavendish, no, the Cavendish. It was Latash. There was always somebody playing there and everything. So live music was good, but this was so different. So it had its own language, its own dress code, and everything like that. And you could say, yeah, all these genres of music or all these fads had their own fashion, which is true, but they didn't have their own language. They didn't have their own take on history and that political movement. You know what I mean? Or that thought-provoking thing. You know what I mean? Teenagers with their teenage angst listening to new romantics and all that. That wasn't for me.
Would you say, in terms of shaping your identity, that hip hop has helped you get a better understanding of who you are?
I would definitely say it shaped me. When you're a Sikh and the essence is you're shaped, and you try to fill that shape, and that's the thing. So what do you call it? You kept the star, your case, and everything like that, and then you try to live up to these standards, these ideals, which is fantastic. That's what we try to do. But that thing of looking into history and oppression and everything, that did definitely come from listening to hip hop and rap, and I'm going, well, we've come through similar things, and we're looking at this, and then you looked at the political struggles, and I think, yeah, it's shaped that way. I think anything else, as a Sardar growing up in the 70s from partition, you always stood out, so you had to know yourself, you had to be comfortable in your own skin, you had to be able to articulate why we look the way we look and we do what we do. So I don't think that way, but yeah, it did open avenues of thought for me, definitely.
It sounds like it opened a thinking process within you, but equally there's a link there that you've made to being a Sikh. You mentioned the star, the turban, and the case, which is here. Are you able to talk a little bit more about, your own identity and your connection to Sikhi?
Yeah, it's people said it's quite interesting now when you talk to youngsters, and they say, "Oh, did you ever come across racism?" I said, "Well, we were kids in the 70s, of course you did. We were growing up in the 80s, of course you did. Even now, you're faced with this horrendous thought process people have, this cancerous thing that." You know what I mean? We're all the same. This is that people forget that. You know what I mean? It's used to divide everybody. But there wouldn't be a time that I thought I would cut my hair. You know what I mean? Lots of people cut their hair, then they've come back to Sikh and everything like that. For myself, it's there. It's difficult. My Gurmukhi is terrible. Try to get better. I can't read or write Gurmukhi, but this is where now, even in Sikhi, you see, I've always seen it as linear. When I've always talked to friends about their religions or their their faith, and they always say, "Oh, there's a problem because it's hierarchical," and I've always said, "Oh, Sikhi's linear. We're there. Everybody's. If you could start as a Sikh, you finish Sikh, it doesn't matter." And personally, I feel now you've got this. It might just be me, this hierarchy of people saying, "Oh, because you've not done this, you can't be this, or you can't do that, you've not chucked umrit." The goal is to chuck umrit, or, "Oh, but you've don't that, you cut your hair, you trim your hair." All these things, you don't speak Punjabi properly, you can't read or write Gurmukhi. These shouldn't be a thing. A Sikh is from something from your heart. That's what we've been taught, that's what we know, that's the teachings of our gurus. And everything else falls in place at the right time. So, yes, I think it's anything that can get you on that path, whether it be a different genre of music, some different literature that opens your mind to read, to learn, to be on the path of getting to where you have enlightenment or you have peace within yourself, is always a good thing.
Absolutely, being content is quite an incredible place to be. One of the things that I want to just say is that you mentioned the word Gurumki, and Gurumki is the
It's the Sikh language that was instituted by our third Guru, because we changed that because it was in northern Punjab, you had Hindi, you had Urdu, but Gurumukhi is our Sikh own language.
Thanks very much for giving that insight and that detail. And you also mentioned Chak and Amrit. It would be really nice to know what your perception or your interpretation of that is.
For those who don't know the Sikh faith, Amrit is nectar of the divine, so that's what you take as there's a ceremony to become baptized as a Khalsa, which is an Orthodox Sikh, and where you forego intoxicants, you give your life to seva basically, but you can still function in a modern society in anything you do because there's nothing there to keep you apart from that. It's been made, and that is the goal for all Sikhs, I think, but it's very difficult. It is a journey, and I think when you are at the right time, you will become at one with yourself and your spirituality, and then that will help you Chak Amrit, and then you can be that Guru Sikh, but you need to be ready for it, and I'm definitely not ready for it, and I think it's a challenge. I think it's challenging to a lot of my generation. I think now you see, and it's amazing to see younger Sikhs, boys, girls, Chak and Amrit, they're not from the diaspora in different countries because they have that knowledge, they have that confidence, and I think we'd never had that when we were growing up, and now this is where being comfortable, and you're saying being comfortable with the knowledge, giving yourself over to that is coming about, so hopefully.
Fantastic. You talked a little bit there about seva. Could you tell me the meaning of the word and also your interpretation of how you go about putting that into practice?
For those who don't know the Sikh faith, one of the cornerstones is seva, selfless service to the community and others. Doesn't matter what community, what others, we're there to help. We are Sevadar of Guru, of Waheguru, sorry. One of the other cornerstones is Langar, which is a communal free kitchen instituted by Guru Nanak, which was a meal prepared for everybody. Usually always vegetarian, so everybody can partake. Everybody sits on the ground, so there is no difference in stature or caste or religion or hierarchy at all. And it's made by people that donate their time, their food. It's not paid for, it's there. That's seva. And that's one of the things that got me into cooking, to see this amazing thing of food bringing different people together, holding a community together. In Edinburgh, it was a small Sangat, which is a community, and yeah, so the way I do it when I do go to the Gurdwara, which is a Sikh place of worship, you can always find me in the kitchen either washing up, which is fantastic. That's my favourite type of seva. I like to sit and just stand there and wash all the dishes. You're just in a zone. Or if I needed in the kitchen, I help in the kitchen. So seva is a fundamental part of being a Sikh. You will help people in need.
Sounded there as if you were talking a little bit about being in you mentioned the zone there, and it's almost as if you're in a place where you're still, you're finding some contentment. Would you say when you've mentioned you're washing the dishes and being in the Gurdwara in that sense?
And I think that's one of the things where the Gurdwara gives, and hopefully you shouldn't feel stress, anger, anything that'll take you away from contemplating on God and your place in the universe. And I think seva helps it for me, because when we do sit there and with AV and IT and all these new things that we can see, when the Granth Sahib is getting read, there's a translation which is fantastic, because it's written in a style of Gurukhi. It's quite old. It's very poetic, so it's sometimes very hard to understand for me personally. So that's good. But I do find my peace helping out physically doing seva downstairs.
And I think that's lovely to hear, because spirituality, religion, faith, as you said, it's an individual journey, and each of us will find that space, that point, that time, as and when it presents itself to us along our path. I'd like to just go back, if I could, touch on something that you mentioned about your generation, in terms of seeing the younger generation appear to be able to embrace practicing Sikhi in a way that, on the outside looking in from a different generation, appears to be much more smoother, less challenging. When you talked about your generation and finding it a bit more challenging to embrace Sikhi, could you expand on that a little?
I think it's still challenging for them, but I think they have the confidence and the support to and the tools to understand Sikhi in a way that they embrace it 100% and are confident to uphold the values of Shuk and Amrit and keeping to the path.
Would you say then that back when you were growing up, or in your younger formative years, or your youth, would you say that there wasn't as much of a physical presence in terms of numbers of baptised, practising Orthodox Sikhs, if you like, in Edinburgh?
In Scotland, maybe. And again, that was generalising. It depends where you were in the country.
Okay.
If you look at the grand scale of things, the populations of Sikhs in Scotland has always been very small, and Edinburgh is smaller. So Glasgow's always got a bigger congregation. It still has. Edinburgh's congregation is getting bigger. You've got congregations in Dundee for years, all over the place now. It's great. But I think, yes, it was difficult because you could not relate to anybody, you did not see, and they were. You had Orthodox, you had Amritdhari, but they wouldn't wear the banner or anything like that. But this is like now it's more accepted. I think it's easier there because education again across all communities has opened up people's thought process to different faiths, all pointing to the same thing, the goodness and humanity.
Absolutely. So a generational change and shift.
Yes.
Having seen so much work go into trying to, I suppose, educate, as you've said, the majority of people around different faiths, how they practice, what it means to them. But also, one of the things I like is commonality. When people start to discuss their own personal faith or their beliefs, and they use that in a way to try and explain to others who may not have as much knowledge that there is more commonality than there is difference.
But that's in humanity. There's more that brings us together than divides us. The problem is the things that divide us, people exploit, and that's the biggest sleight of hand that's been played to the masses. You can always pay one half of the poor to kill the other half, and you can always turn one half of the poor on the other half, and that's it. And it's lack of education.
Tony, it's been absolutely lovely having you come and join us in the studio, and thanks so much for your time and for sharing your memories, your insights and your experiences with us. Before we do go, I just want to draw attention to that jumper that you've got on. I know that people won't be able to see it, but it's got Fear of a Black Planet on it.
Yeah, it's an album cover from Public Enemy, but this is a collaboration with Superdry.
Is that one of the ways that you like to kind of stay connected to hip-hop, in terms of now that you're a more mature person? Do you go to gigs, or is it still the clothing? How do you still stay connected?
I listen to the tunes, obviously, the clothes, but some of the stuff, old school, you know what I mean? Some of the stuff's a bit, you have to age with grace.
How's that going for you?
I've my wee bammer still in there. He gets it once in a while.
I reckon we've got a wee essence set now that you're back in your old stomping ground in Leith, mate.
Aye, I'm away to, yes, we're catching up with a few friends, and it used to be called the Volley, but I think it's called, what's it now? It's the Mousetrap or something? No, it's
the Mousetrap. It is the Mousetrap. It was the Mousetrap, but the Volunteer Arms, I know exactly what you're talking about. Aye, the Volley.
That's it. So we're away, we're meeting there for a little
aperitif.
A wee libation, yes.
I will not hold you back. And there's no school like the old school. Again, thank you so much, Donny. It's been lovely to have you.
Thanks, no problem.